The Curse of Eternal Wealth, Clara's Dark Legacy. Clara was known as the wealthiest woman in the city. She had everything: mansions, fleets of cars, and unimaginable wealth. But more than that, she had beauty that seemed timeless. Clara had a unique way of choosing her husband. Every man who wanted to marry her had to pass a test, one that would prove they loved her for better or worse. One of her suitors, Edward, was a struggling writer. She invited him to her grand estate, where she handed him a small, dusty chest. "Inside this box is your greatest fear," she said. Edward hesitated but opened the box, only to find a stack of his unfinished manuscripts. Clara smiled. "You must give up your dreams to be with me. Can you do it?" Edward agreed. "I don't need my dreams if I have you," he said, looking at her with adoration. Clara's eyes gleamed. "Then we shall marry tomorrow." The wedding was extravagant, the talk of the town. Clara danced with Edward under a canopy of lights, her smile hiding a dark secret. But within weeks, Edward's health began to fail. He grew frail, confused, and eventually passed away. Clara mourned publicly, but in private she remained as radiant as ever. Over the years, Clara repeated this with many men. Each test was different. For Michael, a young soldier, she asked him to walk barefoot across a bed of burning coals to prove his devotion. For Jonathan, a doctor, she made him abandon his patients for a month to show that she was his priority. Clara, however, remained youthful and untouched, her wealth growing with every marriage. Ryan was a humble young man who had spent his life caring for his sick mother, Margaret. They lived in a tiny apartment on the edge of the city, struggling to make ends meet. One day, Margaret's condition worsened, and the doctor delivered devastating news. She has only 30 days left unless she receives immediate treatment. Ryan was crushed. He didn't have the money for her medical bills. Desperation loomed over him like a dark cloud. His best friend, Leo, came to him with an idea. "Ryan, you've heard of Clara, right? The wealthy woman who's always looking for a husband? If you marry her, your problems will be solved. She'll pay for your mother's treatment, and you'll live like a king." Ryan hesitated. "But what kind of man would I be if I married for money?" "Think about your mother," Leo pressed. "She's dying. This is your chance to save her." One day, while running errands, Ryan bumped into Clara, literally. She was stepping out of her limousine, and Ryan accidentally knocked over her handbag. "Watch where you're going!" her driver barked, but Clara silenced him with a wave of her hand. "Let him speak," she said, her voice smooth and commanding. Ryan apologized, flustered, but Clara was intrigued. She had never seen someone so genuine, so unpolished. "Join me for dinner," she said suddenly. Ryan blinked in surprise. I don't think I can." "Nonsense," Clara insisted. "I always reward those who catch my attention." At dinner, Clara studied Ryan closely. She could see his desperation, his inner conflict. She decided to test him. "Ryan, if you could have anything in the world, what would it be?" "To save my mother," he answered without hesitation. Clara's smile widened. "And what would you sacrifice for that?" Ryan hesitated. "Anything," he said finally. Clara leaned in, her eyes gleaming. "Then marry me, and your wish will be granted." Ryan spent a sleepless night grappling with his decision. He thought of his mother lying weak in her bed, her kind smile fading with each passing day. Finally, with a heavy heart, he agreed to Clara's proposal. The wedding preparations were grand and extravagant, like nothing Ryan had ever seen before. Clara spared no expense, ensuring every detail was perfect. The ceremony was held in her sprawling estate, with white roses lining the marble aisle. The media swarmed outside the gates, eager to capture the story of the common man marrying the mysterious wealthy woman. Clara wore a glittering silver gown that seemed to shimmer unnaturally under the light. Ryan, dressed in a tailored suit, stood at the altar feeling out of place. His heart pounded, not with excitement but with dread. He couldn't shake the feeling that he was making a terrible mistake. As Clara walked down the aisle, her piercing gaze locked onto Ryan. She looked radiant, yet something about her presence felt unnerving. When she reached him, she whispered, "You'll never regret this, Ryan. I promise." At first, things seemed perfect. Clara was generous, paying for his mother's treatment immediately. Margaret's health improved, and Ryan felt a sense of relief. Clara lavished Ryan with gifts, took him on exotic vacations, and treated him like royalty. Yet, despite the luxury surrounding him, Ryan couldn't shake the strange feeling in the pit of his stomach. Clara had an odd habit of watching him when she thought he wasn't looking. Her gaze wasn't one of love but of possession, as if he were a prize she had claimed. One night, Ryan woke up to find Clara sitting at the edge of the bed, staring out the window. Her silhouette looked different, frail, as though she had aged overnight. When he called her name, she turned to him with a smile that sent chills down his spine. "Everything is fine, my dear," she said, her voice softer than usual, but Ryan noticed the faint lines around her eyes and the gray streaks in her hair. Days later, while exploring the mansion, Ryan stumbled upon a hidden room. It was filled with old photographs, journals, and portraits of men, Clara's previous husbands. They all looked eerily similar. Young, handsome, and full of life in their wedding pictures, but sickly and aged in the later photos. One journal caught Ryan's attention. It belonged to Edward, one of Clara's first husbands. His final entry read, "She is not what she seems. The wealth, the beauty, it's all a lie. She drains us, takes our youth to keep herself alive. I don't know how much time I have left." Ryan's hands trembled as he pieced everything together. Clara wasn't just wealthy, she was cursed. She had been alive for centuries, using her husbands as sacrifices to sustain her youth and fortune. Ryan confronted Clara that evening during dinner. "How many lives have you taken?" he demanded, slamming the journal onto the table. Clara's calm demeanor cracked. "You weren't supposed to find that," she said coldly. Her beauty seemed to flicker like a candle in the wind, revealing the face of an ancient woman beneath the surface. "Why?" Ryan pressed. "Why do this?" Clara's voice grew desperate. "You don't understand! I had no choice! The curse binds me! If I don't feed on their youth, I will wither away into nothingness!" Ryan stared at her in disbelief. "And you thought that was worth destroying innocent lives?" Clara's eyes softened for a moment, as if she were about to show remorse, but then they hardened again. "You'll stay with me, Ryan. You'll learn to understand. You're mine now." Ryan refused to accept his fate. Over the following days, Clara grew weaker. Her beauty faded, and her wealth began to disappear. The lavish mansion started to crumble, her expensive possessions turned to dust, and her influence over the world vanished. Finally, Clara collapsed in front of Ryan. You broke the cycle," she whispered. "No one ever resisted me like you did. You've ended it." With her last breath, Clara aged rapidly, her body crumbling into dust. When Clara died, Ryan was left with nothing, except a mysterious golden artifact she had always kept hidden. The artifact glowed faintly in his hands, and strange things began to happen. People from far and wide came to see him, drawn by an inexplicable force. They brought him gifts and treated him with reverence, calling him the man who ended the curse. Though Ryan had lost the life of luxury, he found something far greater: peace, purpose, and the love of those around him. He had not only saved his mother but also freed countless others from Clara's dark legacy. After Clara's death, the mansion fell silent. The once glamorous halls were now crumbling, the furniture turning to dust, and the gardens wilting. The golden artifact Clara left behind pulsed with a faint glow, and Ryan felt its strange energy. But he was left with questions. What was this artifact, and why did it feel connected to him? Exhausted, he returned to his mother's modest home, now restored thanks to Clara's earlier payments. Margaret was shocked to see him so drained. "Ryan, what happened to you?" she asked, her voice filled with worry. Ryan couldn't bring himself to tell her everything. He only said, "She's gone, Mom, it's over." But things were far from over. Over the following weeks, Ryan began to notice strange occurrences. People he had never met started arriving at his door, claiming they had dreamed of him. They brought gifts, food, money, trinkets, and spoke of his destiny. Some knelt before him, calling him a savior. At first, Ryan dismissed it as superstition, but then, late one night, he was awoken by a bright light emanating from the artifact. It hovered above his desk, projecting images of Clara's past. He saw her first marriage centuries ago, her desperation to escape poverty, and the deal she made with a shadowy figure to gain eternal youth and wealth. The figure's voice echoed in the room. "This curse binds you to the artifact. Break it and you'll lose everything. Fail to feed it and you'll die." Ryan realized the artifact was the source of Clara's power and her curse. But now, it seemed to have chosen him. The townspeople's reverence grew. Ryan's home became a pilgrimage site, with crowds gathering daily to offer him gifts and seek his blessing. While this brought him wealth, it also brought him discomfort. He didn't want to live like Clara, exploiting others to sustain himself. One day, a woman named Sarah arrived. She wasn't like the others. She didn't bring gifts or kneel before him. Instead, she looked him in the eye and said, "You're not free, are you?" Her words struck a nerve. Ryan invited her inside and confided in her, explaining everything: the curse, Clara's dark past, and the artifact's mysterious power. Sarah listened intently before saying, "If this artifact is tied to the curse, maybe destroying it can free you." Ryan's expression shifts to one of hope and desperation as he contemplates Sarah's words, the weight of the curse heavy on his shoulders. Ryan hesitated. "But what if it destroys me too?" "Is this the life you want?" Sarah asked. "Living in fear, surrounded by strangers who worship you for something you don't even understand." Ryan knew she was right. Determined to end the curse, Ryan returned to Clara's mansion, now a decaying ruin. He carried the artifact with him, its glow growing brighter the closer he got. Inside the mansion, he found a hidden chamber beneath the grand staircase. The walls were lined with inscriptions in an ancient language. As he placed the artifact on an altar at the center of the room, the ghostly voice of Clara echoed around him. "Ryan, don't do this. You'll lose everything." Ryan clenched his fists. "You lost yourself long before you gained all this. I won't make the same mistake." The room began to shake as the artifact's light intensified. Shadows swirled around Ryan, whispering temptations. "Keep the power, rule the world, save yourself." But Ryan closed his eyes and thought of his mother, Sarah, and the innocent men who had suffered because of Clara's greed. "This ends now," he shouted, smashing the artifact against the altar. The artifact shattered into a million pieces, releasing a blinding light that enveloped the entire mansion. Ryan felt a surge of energy pass through him, followed by an overwhelming sense of peace. When the light faded, the mansion was completely gone, reduced to dust. Ryan stumbled out of the rubble. The weight of the curse finally lifted. For the first time in weeks, he felt free. Back in town, the crowd stopped coming to Ryan's home. The mysterious pull of the artifact was gone, and with it, the gifts and wealth. But Ryan didn't mind. He had his mother, who was fully recovered, and Sarah, who stayed by his side, helping him rebuild his life. One day as they walked through the town square, a child ran up to Ryan and handed him a single flower. "Thank you," the child said simply before running off. Ryan smiled, realizing that even without wealth or power, he had gained something far more valuable: freedom, purpose, and a second chance at life. Though the artifact and Clara's curse were gone, stories of Ryan's bravery spread far and wide. People still spoke of the young man who had faced temptation and chosen to do what was right. His story became a legend, a reminder that no amount of wealth or power could replace the value of a pure heart. And as Ryan stood on the hill overlooking his humble home, he whispered to himself, "This is enough. This is all I need." Please like, share, comment, and subscribe to be able to get our update when we post a new video. Thank you for your support. We share a lot of love.